I want to welcome anybody that tunes into our broadcast. We're glad to have you tune in. We have Joshua Chairs with us from the Pennsylvania Phantom Detectives LLC. So we're going to be talking with Joshua, and we've got a few questions for him. So we're just going to jump right in. Joshua, you have anything you want to say before we get started here?
I'm looking forward to answering any questions that come in from your end and your listeners' end. So I think it'll be a really great time.
Okay. All right. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in the paranormal?
Sure. I got started in the paranormal as a kid, much like anybody watching Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of, which was, one of those early shows of paranormal-based topics back in the late 70s. I used to watch reruns as a kid. And then in, of course, 1988, I was really drawn to this show called Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack, much like every kid at that time. It was one of the first shows to really talk about, ghosts and hauntings and UFOs and all that. And there was this episode on there called The Haunting of the General Wayne Inn, which is an old coaching inn that dates back to 1709. The General Wayne Inn is known to be one of Philadelphia's most haunted places. It's George Washington once sort of mayor there, the Marquis de Lafayette, Edgar Allan Poe, and also other famous dignitaries stayed there. And the alleged paranormal history of the General Wayne Inn dates back to the 1850s when people reported seeing a Hessian soldier from the Revolutionary War named Wilhelm in different parts. And of course, much the other patrons that were sitting at the bar would basically see the TV go clockwise and counterclockwise when that episode of Unsolved Mysteries would air. Also, there's reports of a car, supposedly like one of the tenants that worked at the inn would go outside, and when they go outside, they would see like there was a car completely turned on, and just and beeping the horn. But the problem with that is that the alleged account is that there was no car keys in the car, there was no one in the car, and it was completely locked. So for that to happen, there's no reasonable explanation why that happened. So it was pretty amazing. As we got into the 90s, I started growing from kindergarten to school age. I started researching every topic I could on UFOs, sort of reading books on ghosts, and of course the studies of Dr. Hans Holzer, who was America's first ghost hunter, and his different topics, and of course to Coast AM with Art Bell back in the 90s. And what really started piquing my interest is when the show called Most Haunted with Yvette Fielding and Carl Beatty, where they would go to Britain and go to like different haunted locations like the Tower of London and different locations all over England, and with these old castles. And it was just so cool to see, like all that when it went there in 2001. Yeah. And then, of course, I did an investigation. I actually had the rare opportunity to investigate the General Wayne Inn in 2002 with a local mentor of mine by the name of the late Michael Lemaire. She's since passed away, but she actually wrote a quantitative analysis of the inn in 2000. And there I was with a local Philadelphia paranormal investigating team at that time. And in the basement area, there's alleged accounts of people seeing this Hessian soldier. So I went ahead and took a digital camera. And back then, of course, paranormal investigation equipment is not like it is now with all these different scare bears and REM pods and ovuluses and 4K cameras. Might have had an EMF meter, maybe a tape recorder for EVPs, maybe a Geiger counter and dowsing rods, just a few, equipment. So I went ahead and just took my digital camera and just took 3 consecutive photos, much like everybody that investigates the paranormal. And one of the photos actually had these really weird green and yellow streaks of light in them. And I have no reasonable explanation why these photos actually were in the photo. So I took it to a film company and they looked at it and they said there was no defects or no negatives, that no exposure or nothing that could have caused the strange anomalies in the photos. So that was a really weird thing. And then, of course, around 2004, Ghost Hunters comes out on TV. Jason the Plumbers from Murder Rooter, Jason Haas, Grant Wilson, and I started rural. I never missed an episode. Every week I would watch, all those guys go from like Eastern State Penitentiary to the Conjuring House to, the Hinsdale House. So just really cool seeing because they kind of started it all on national TV. And then, of course, 2007, Paranormal State comes out with Ryan Buell and Katrina Weidman and Heather Tad with Chip Coffey. That's about the one with the Penn State. And the funny thing is my best friend, Gwen, went to college with Katrina Wyman and Heather Taddy. And I actually own one of Ryan Buell's old tri-field EMF meters, which is really cool.
Okay.
So that came out. And then, of course, Ghost Adventures, all that stuff started coming out on TV, and never missed any of that episode. So let's circle to 2014 when and here's a great question we could tie into the Summer Wind Restoration Society. And you asked a question, I think before the podcast, is what is the Summer Wind Restoration Society? So right. Summer Wind Mansion is known to be one of the most haunted locations in Wisconsin. It actually was created in 1914 by a guy named John Frank. You could stay there for $4.99 a night in West Bay Lake Fishing Lodge. And it was a fishing lodge for 2 years, and then it was converted into a mansion in 1916 when Robert Patterson Lamont, who was a future U.S. Secretary of Commerce under President Herbert Hoover, he bought the West Bay Lake Fishing Lodge and had it reconverted into a mansion. And of course, he employed famous architects Thomas Talmadge and Vernon Watson. And once they reconverted into a mansion, a lot of strange paranormal activity started going on. Mr. Lamont, of course, would tell the servants would tell him that the house was haunted, and he actually said, "Hey, grew up. There's no such thing as ghosts." And then, according to one of the accounts, one of the servants actually saw a floating lady in the kitchen area, and he said, "There's no such thing as ghosts." And there's even a rumor that U.S. presidents, Warren G. Harding and Calvin Coolidge, back in the 20s, stayed there. In that time. So it's actually a summer home that was on the shore of the lake. And of course, one of the most scariest ghost stories that came out of Summerwind is Mr. Lamont and his wife were eating dessert one day at the table. And, this basement door flew open, revealing the ghostly form man. So he fires 2 shots, bang, bang, like that at the door, missing the ghost, and never returns to the mansion. This was covered on season 1, episode 2, called The Haunting of Summerwind, which was, pretty amazing. And then, of course, the place, unfortunately, Mr. Lamont died in 1948. So a lady by the name of Lillian Kiefer, she bought the place thinking she could make a go of it. And Miss Kiefer would lease it out to different owners over the next 20 years, thinking, all of a sudden it would just come back to her every time. People experiencing strange activity. And then it wasn't until a family called the Hinshaw family, actually I know both April, the little girl that was there, and Ray, who's Ginger's brother. Ginger has since passed away in 2013. But when they bought the place, they had to have it. They thought it was a great fixer-upper. The place was known to be very active, and of course, some of the paranormal stories that came out of Summerwind when the Hinshaws took over, it really started escalating up. One of the rumors is that supposedly they would have these windows completely bolted shut. So what happened was when they would nail the windows shut, they would fly open on their own for no reasonable explanation. And then, of course, after they would try nailing the windows shut, there's an alleged rumor that Mr. Hinshaw, who was a contractor, his real name was Jim Hill. Of course, they changed the name for the book that they wrote about it. And supposedly the car caught on fire. And then, of course, there's this crawl space that his daughter, April, he had a 10-year-old stepdaughter. It was Ginger's daughter. And supposedly they found this crawl space underneath this in one area of the mansion, and to look at it, and they found the skeleton of the book. And fortunately, they went to go ahead and when they shined the light on it, she completely screamed, and they went and called the local Land O'Lakes police. But unfortunately, when the police came to check it out, there was no ghost at all. So unfortunately, all that, with that story about finding the skeleton. And then, what happened was after that, the stepdad, Arnold, went mad. He played the organ to all hours of the night, and the family was terrified. They had to resort staying in one room. And then, of course, what happened was Ginger tried committing suicide, and Mr. Hinshaw was, of course, committed to a mental institution up in Canada. He was never seen from again. So what happened was Ginger decided to give the place back to Miss Kiefer, and then Miss Kiefer sold it to Ginger's father, Ray Von Bober Sr., who was a popcorn vendor from Chicago. And then, of course, Ginger pleaded her father, "Don't buy this place. It's terrible. It's haunted." And then, of course, the Von Bobers said, we're going to go ahead and try to make a go of the place. So when the Von Bobers bought it, of course, Ray Sr. Basically told his son, Ray Jr., who was going to do some contracting on the place, because his father and son were going to try to make a go of the place again back in the 70s. And, of course, Ray Jr. actually got out of the Army at that time, so they started doing renovations. Now, here's what really gets strange. they would actually have tools working and, painting and all that stuff throughout the evening. And then what happened was tools would disappear on their own inside the mansion. So they have no idea what happened to those tools. So after that, basically then they would measure blueprints. We actually have the original blueprints in my and so they would measure the rooms basically, and then all of a sudden they would change shape. And from the original blueprints, they would look at the blueprints and they would find out that, hey, the rooms actually were knowing the shape change. And then, of course, there was a story that supposedly Ray Jr. was, because the Hinshells or the Von Bobers, when they had it, they lived out on a trailer on the property. They never lived inside the actual house. According to this actual report that Mr. Von Bober Ray Jr. was actually upstairs doing some painting, and all of a sudden he started seeing, he felt a presence and he started going downstairs. And then, of course, he started seeing visions of the gunshot from the 1935 when Mr. Lamont was there. And, of course, much like everything else, the Von Bobers abandoned it in 1979. I wrote a book called A Paranormal Experience, which was written by Wolfgang Von Bober, Ray's father. And then, of course, they gave the place back to Miss Kiefer, and then Miss Kiefer died in 1985. And then a couple called Harold and Babs Tracy, they're from La Crosse, Wisconsin. Mr. Tracy bought the property for his wife, Miss Tracy, and much like everybody else, they try to make it go to the place again. But unfortunately, Father's Day of 1988, the place burnt down. Lightning, fire, and all that took it down on Father's Day of 1988. And all that remains today are the two tall chimneys, the foundation, the steps, and that's it. But we have the original blueprints to it. So here's where I come in 26 years later in 2014. I go ahead and go to summerwindmansion.com, which was still standing at that time. It was like a huge database on the history of the mansion. So I go ahead and buy the original blueprints of Summerwind, then I seek out a connection, and then I come across my friend Craig Nary. And of course, Craig runs the Fox Valley Ghost Hunters up there in Appleton and La Crosse, Wisconsin. So he goes ahead and he has access to the property. So I sent him a copy of the original blueprints of Summer, which were quite hard to get. And he goes ahead holding fundraisers on the property. So the idea is we're trying to rebuild this haunted mansion right from the original blueprints, but we can't without having, having zoning codes and updates. And of course you need investors too. So the current owner, to be able to rebuild this place is a haunted bed and breakfast. And I know Craig has been spearheading currently the properties for sale, but he's been spearheading trying to get Jeff Belanger from Ghost Adventures involved to try to help find an investor. So hopefully someday they do, but I did help co-found that project. It was a very passionate, helped me get my start in the paranormal, leading towards me starting a team.
Yep. Okay. Very good. Well, if you while you're working on that project, one of my team members, Danny Palmari Schaefer, worked for an organization called Historic Houston, and they used to tear down historic buildings and recycle the wood so that people that are restoring things could use that wood and stuff and get real dimensional lumber that actually fit as a replacement part. And she and her husband, since Historic Houston closed, her and her husband go out and tear down some buildings, and they bring that lumber to their homes and they sell it to different locations. They're doing that now. And so occasionally they have some really great lumber. They've got some timbers that are huge, I think she told me she had one that was 40 inches by 40 inches by 30 feet long. So, I mean, they've got some stuff, for pole barns and stuff like that, you can't get anywhere. So if you get to where you are looking for some lumber, you might let us know and I'll connect you with her.
That would be awesome, because I think the good news is, like, getting this thing rebuilt. What I'll do is I'll give you guys Craig Nary's website, and he actually had his phone number right on his website.
Okay.
So he actually, he could definitely use building materials. So, like, if there's ever a plan to rebuild from the original blue, Craig would be contacted. The good news is he does benefits on the property every year. They do host public investigations. Right. So it'll be a great opportunity, I think, and I could definitely connect you. Maybe if you guys are ever interested in seeing a place up in Wisconsin, take a trip up there, I could definitely make arrangements.
Okay, very good. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your team and how you're organized?
Sure. So actually, of course, I founded Phantom Detectives in August 20th of 2020. I really wanted to revolutionize paranormal investigating in the state of Pennsylvania because I felt like there's a lot of teams that go by the wayside. I wanted to get a new start, because I felt the old team that I was in wasn't progressing in a way that I felt it needed to be. So go ahead and get a fresh start. So I started. I just went ahead and said, look, we're going to start from scratch. And when I went ahead and I took the idea for Phantom Detectives, reading an old 1950s comic called The Phantom Detective. It's an old book. I think that dates back to the 50s and 60s. Very famous and well-known comic. So I said, hey, I like this name. It really is a great name for a paranormal team. So what we did, we started creating business cards. We started creating social media pages, team emails. And then, of course, we had our first logo designed. And then we just started doing investigations under the new banner in October of 2020. And at the time, it was only me and my team member, basically, who since left the team. She started her career. She was a Civil War reenactor, a sound engineer. She built paranormal equipment. She was great to have in the early days to help me get started with this new group. And then, of course, we actually went to the Selma Mansion, which is located in Norristown, Pennsylvania. And there we got to meet Brian J. Cano, of course, from the show Haunted Collector. Everyone knows who Brian is. He was a tech manager for and a great guy. He showed us how to conduct EVPs, how to properly use a pendulum, how to properly use EMF meter. He just gave us a whole crash course of how to start a team. So what we did is we took all that knowledge, and then we did our first investigation under the new banner. And of course, I had a website built, which is phantomdetectives.org. I had my own, got a couple guys a program to build it. They did an amazing job building the website up from ground up. And then we took that knowledge and we started building our first investigation at the Sanderson Museum in Chadds Ford on December 9th, 2020. It was just me and my former team member. So what we did was we set up equipment in various parts of the week. And with this museum, it's a pretty amazing place because it has actual artifacts. There was a bandage inside the museum that was on President Lincoln after he was shot by John Wilkes Booth. Ford Cedar in 1865. That's in there. There's also a purse from the Jenny Wade House that was a part of Gettysburg. That's in there as well. Wow. And of course, amazing about this place is Mr. Sanderson hosted square dances. He was also known to be a violin player. He also did he was a poet, radio show host. He did a lot of stuff. And this is like all his collection he's got letters from like Sitting Bull, Shirley Temple. He used to write to a lot of famous people back in the 40s when he was alive. And unfortunately, his mother, Hannah, had died there in 1946 from tuberculosis. And then, of course, he died in 1967. And the place went to his friend Andrew Wyeth, who kind of restored it and brought it back. So this place has a lot of paranormal activity. And the night that we were there, we set up in the violin room, which is going to be the most active room of the museum. And what was amazing was not only we had the security camera going off, we also caught this huge orb. And it almost looked like it had a very defined face in it. And also our EMF meters, our batteries drained in our EMF meters, and our DVR security cameras started malfunctioning. And and then the orb popping up. When you can add layers upon layers, that's when it went crazy. And then when we did this second investigation at the Mill of Anselmo, which is this old mill that dates back to 1748 in the Lightfoot, we actually set up equipment again, much like we did before. But what was wild was we were the only ones on the property that night. We actually caught this door fly open by itself with no reasonable explanation. Our security camera caught it, and I have no idea how that happened. And then, of course, we had on the second floor, we started doing like thermal pictures. We caught a couple images on a thermal picture, which is a thermal imaging camera is where it points and clicks, it picks up hot and cold spots in an environment. And you can use basic auto mechanics use it, different people that are helicopters that use it when they're searching for missing people in the wilderness, they use it. So what was even crazy, we had this rope that was swinging by itself from the DVR camera called that. And then when we went to do EVPs upstairs, we kind of captured this EVP that said, go, go. I was like, holy heck, that's scary. And so that was a lot of stuff that happened that night. So what we did was the evidence review. We actually, I asked our third member join, who's actually not here today. We got the psychic lawyer, psychic explorer, Mark Anthony. He joined the team to bring his skills in from, he's like, he's a real deal lawyer basically. So he's a psychic, a lawyer, and he serves as a researcher. So he's working with us right now remotely from Florida, but he handles all of our contracts. If we need any research haunted locations, he'll look those up. Kind of like an advisor to us. He's going to be joining us in July at the Bucksville house. And then, of course, the great thing is this is where Mr. Rick Warner comes in. So Rick he used to used to be part of MUFON, the Mutual Field UFO Network. And he actually is he actually got certified as a certified UFO field investigator. He's an expert on interviewing people. He's very good at graphics, website design. So he comes in. I invite him to join and bring his skills into the Phantom Detectives talent pool. And then Rick, of course, started. He also is the U.S. ambassador to the Italian UFO Federation. So he wanted to learn about bringing in his skills from into the spirit world, much like he did in the UFO world. So he's been absolutely fantastic. He serves as our videographer. He also films our investigations. He puts them out on Patreon and Udemy. And of course, he has a lot of skills in video editing. So he does a lot of stuff for us. And then what he did is he actually made his debut investigation. We went to the Betsy Ross house up in Philadelphia. Everyone's heard of Betsy Ross house. It's
sure.
It's one of the iconic places in America. And there we did a paranormal investigation of the Betsy Ross house. And the night that we were there, we had a lot of strange things happen. This was only a 2 or 3 hour investigation because factor in we had to get back in time. Philadelphia had bad traffic, so we only did 2 hours. But in that 2 hours, we captured a lot of strange things. We captured an EVP that said, "I've been here too," up in Betsy's old husband's room. We also got some growls from the in the basement area, which was completely terrifying. And then, of course, we started getting we have one of those paralyzed from North Canton Paranormal Detective that started going off. And then so that was a very terrifying investigation. I thought there was one thing that was missing from our team. So I went ahead and got a recommendation. So in June, there's someone named Cindy Kaza she's a world famous, renowned medium from the show The Holzer Files. Everyone's heard of Cindy. One of the top mediums in the world.
Sure.
She actually recommended me one of her proteges, one of her students, Melissa Ferrazzano. So Melissa is a psychic medium. She is she studies advanced mediumship, psychic development. She knows shamanic healing, energy tapping. So she actually had some skills that we didn't have on the team. So I brought Melissa and I said, hey, I think she would be a great fit for the Phantom Detectives talent pool. So she comes in as with her background and she also has hypnotherapy training. So I thought that she was fantastic, in terms of her skills. So when she brought in her skills as a psychic medium, she could do readings, and then we can take our equipment and compare it to her readings and the history and see she's able to tap into that energy. So all three of us are really great at what we do, and we keep our team small because that way we're having 50 people running around trying to. And the more people you have, the more schedules you got to work around.
Yeah, all right.
So she comes in and she brings a lot of stuff into the background. Of course, we do the Selma Mansion again. And of course, the Selma Mansion, when we go back and do our first team investigation there, without Brian, we actually had a lot of strange things happen. The Selma Mansion, of course, actually the funny thing, she's like, I'm picking a connection to Lincoln. And I find out, I check the history of the place and I find out that the person who created the mansion was a guy named General Andrew Porter, who was a great-grandfather of President Lincoln's wife, Mary Todd Lincoln. And then when I go back, she's like, I feel this presence of his servant lady named Martha. And then I check that. And then I find out that Martha, of course, was actually one of the servants that was back in the early 1800s as a servant there. So pretty able to pick up on stuff. I don't even tell her nothing about the history. She picks up on it. Yeah.
Very good. Well, that's how you know a psychic's real.
Because you don't give them any knowledge or any back history.
Yeah.
Let them pick up on the energy itself and see if you can compare the readings. And that's why I love using devices like the Obvious 5. Yeah, the Obvious 5 theory device is not proven in the field of paranormal research.
Right.
Is if you can somehow use it and pair it with your medium and see if you can find words from the Obvious 5 of things that she's feeling or tapping into, then you got a strong cross correlation.
Well, out of all the cases you and your team have done, which one stands out the most to you or means the most to you?
I would say out of all the cases we've done 17 investigations so far the last 2.5 years since we started growing this thing, and it's growing really fast. I would say for me, the one that really scares me the most was we did this investigation in August of 2021. It was a residential building that was featured. It was actually filmed on Dark Hour Paranormal YouTube channel. And of course, the host, Michael Rose, is a good friend of our team's. And this guy, of course, actually, this case was featured in this month's Haunted magazine. So what happened was this guy, of course, started he sent me a message, reached out to us. And of course, I was the case manager at the time before I gave that to Melissa. She now handles that. But in 2020, when I was a case manager, he said, "Hey, I'm experiencing strange paranormal activity. I am actually going through all kinds of things that are going on. I have markings on my legs that might indicate a possible abduction." Then he mentioned to me about his, bed sheets being pulled up. And then, of course, Rick, he's actually skilled with interviewing, so he handles all of our audio interviews on the phone. So much like the TV shows, when they go and interview the client, we just do it over the phone because it just saves the drive. So, of course, Rick does the interview. And, of course, John talks about he sees, like, ghostly faces. Like, he showed us some ghostly faces taken from a security camera. He started, showing, like, seeing, like, hearing a lot of voices in the apartment. So when we went into that apartment, we wanted to be able to verify that was he just hallucinating, saying this? But we decided to take this case on because he sounded very credible for what we were able to gather. So what we did was the minute we went into that apartment, the minute we left, we felt like literally the wind was like knocked, like you get a gut shot when you get hit in the gut. It's like really, like, energy is just so strong in there. And that when we were in that apartment doing that investigation, we were picking up on a lot of different things. Of course, we used the lighted dowsing rods. There's these really cool new dowsing rods from North Canton Paranormal Detectives. You could change the color, and they work fantastic for filming. So Rick started asking questions. Like, we started asking questions. Is there any spirits here that would like to communicate with us? And of course, Rick is really good on the dowsing rods. He is very positive on. So we were picking up on the spirit of a 19-year-old boy who taken his life in the apartment. And then, of course, when we started scanning the ghost box, of course, everyone has ghost boxes. There's so many different types. We like using the S box from Ghost Stop because the advantage of the S box is over the PSB 7 and PSB 11 is it has internal storage. You can back up all your sessions on your SD card, and then you can play it back later. So on the spirit box, we started picking up what we call the potty mouth spirits, where we were getting cussed at over, like, we're like, holy heck, who is this? So Melissa was picking up on a middle-aged woman and an older woman, and the middle-aged woman might have been her daughter. And what was scary was when we did Phantom Time, which is our version of EVPs, we like to call it where the Phantoms come out and talk to us. And on the EVP session, Melissa asked a question: "Is there an older woman here? Is this her home?" And we got this whisper on the voice recorder. I said, right here. I have no reasonable explanation why that happened and how it happened, but like, it seems like to me that apartment was just like completely filled from the minute we left and the minute that we went there. And we tried the best to bless the place too with sage. Hopefully that worked, but it seemed like to me it kind of put a stop to the activity for a while. But the guy eventually had to move out of his apartment because it was starting to affect him physically and emotionally. But we were able to cleanse the property for at least like a couple months. But then the activity started escalating again. So we did what we could.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Now, you had told me that when we were talking and stuff that you feel like there are 4 kinds of hauntings. What 4 types of hauntings how do you categorize these 4 types?
So there's about 4 kinds of hauntings that, of course, in the paranormal that people know about. The first one it's called intelligent haunting, which is like exactly what we have. Mostly the activity haunting all the world. Sure. That directly interacts with the living. They might set off equipment. They might go ahead and communicate you might hear voices. They might you might hear footsteps. Anything that can directly interact with the living. That is one type of haunting. There is also something called a residual haunting. And ghost hunters really, I love how they define residual hauntings. Residual hauntings are like a tape recorder. They play themselves over and over again. It's like a past event that's embedded in the environment. And think of Gettysburg, where all the people passed away on the battlefield and lost their lives. Right. That's an example of a residual haunt. A lot of people report seeing Union and Confederate soldiers marching on the property. I consider that like a residual haunting. It's like a place memory. Sure. And of course, There's also a demonic haunting, which are negative spirits that prey on the living. Be technically, certain things such as very dark figures, demons, stuff like that. So those are kind of things you want to make sure you have to get your properties cleansed. You want to try to avoid those. And of course, there's poltergeists. Poltergeists are, like you said, noisy ghosts. They throw things around. They can levitate. They're called noisy ghosts. So those are the 4 kinds of hauntings that PhantomDetectives LLC classifies. And of course, those are 4 types of hauntings that are mostly associated with every location.
Oh, see, I think that we've covered some of these other questions that we had here in the other topics you were talking about. You might go over a little bit more about some of the various technologies that you use to conduct an investigation.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of various technologies that you can use. I mean, from standard, first thing you can use is standard voice recorders. Like a digital recorder is absolutely fantastic, because the advantage of having a digital recorder is that you can back up those sessions again. And of course, the nice thing about having a digital recorder is you can conduct EVPs. And what we can use is something called Audacity, which is a free audio program. You can play back all of your things. So that's one of the most fantastic technologies that you can use. It's, of course, digital voice recorders, audio recorders, anything like that for EVPs. You can also use EMF meters. EMF meters, of course, everyone has them.
Sure.
Like the measured a milligauss. Personally, we use the millimeter, which I love, picks up electromagnetic fields and temperature. There's also, of course, the tri-field, which I love. And of course, there's all kinds of different EMF meters. And usually the standard unit measure, of course, there's K2 meters, which are in milligauss. You can see it go from all the way from red to green. You can pick up most EMF meters for $20 on Amazon or Ghost Stop. There's EMF meters. And of course, there's also thermal imaging cameras, which of course we use at UTI, and there's FLIR, different kinds of manufacturers out there. They pick up hot and cold spots. And if you see something that's hot, or like an orange or red, that's a living person. But if you see something that's cold, you might have possibly, you have to make sure there's no reflection, nobody standing there. That's another technology, is thermal imaging cameras. There is all, of course, dowsing rods. That can be, the lighted dowsing rods from North Canton Paranormal Detectives. You can change the lighting on them. There's also something really cool for filming called the Phantom light from Ghost Stop. And the beautiful thing about the Phantom light is you can change, if you're filming investigation, you can actually change the lighting from red to blue to orange to green. That's a fantastic technology, because to be able to change the lighting in your area instead of just going standard infrared like everyone else does, changing the color is really neat. And of course, another thing they also have, of course, is the SLS camera. Now, the SLS camera uses Xbox technology to map figures, like a stick figure, like an entity. Now, you have to be very careful with the SLS camera, because it can cause a lot of false readings. If you have, for example, a water bottle near a bed, and you think, oh, all of a sudden it starts mapping out a stick figure, and you think it's a ghost. But a lot of times that stick figure can also be calls from the bedpost, could be calls from a water bottle, a chandelier hanging here. So the Xbox technology, it works. We have to make sure, again, as long as it's against solid walls, because solid walls are another thing. You can also use Geiger counters, which is picks up fluctuations of radiation. That's another thing. And of course, there's spirit boxes. Spirit boxes scan the AM and FM airwaves. The first one used to be called the Frank's box, which is the amazing device. The Frank's box, of course, was created by a guy named Frank, and of course, perfected by Christopher Moon. And then, of course, Gary Galka, who was part of, he runs a company called DAS Distribution. He created the PSB7. Scans one, you can scan AM and FM stations, and of course the PSB11, where you can scan 2 radio stations at once. So the Spirit box is an absolutely fantastic device. And of course, there's also trigger objects. You can use REM pod scare bears, set them up and just go beep, 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 stuff like that. Really great devices. So and of course, you can use a DVR system. I love using a DVR system, because the idea of being able to use a DVR system is that you can actually really tap into the filming part. And the nice thing of having a DVR system is that once you do that, you can set up 4 cameras in different places, and you can also turn all the lights out, and it'll pick up everything that you can't see. So if you're not in a room investigating, that camera's going on, and you might pick up an orb, you might voice. something moving. So having a security camera right there is almost very important too.
We had 2 set up on an investigation. Well, actually, we had a 12 camera system, and
Nice.
we have 12 cameras. But anyway, we had 2 cameras that were set up in a hallway. They were 2 adjoining bedrooms, and we actually had an orb that was in one of the children's bedroom float through the wall, come out the other wall in the other bedroom and across the room there. And we didn't have a camera when it left the room, but we had an orb that went through 2 rooms.
That is amazing. And now I would love to talk to you about one of my favorite topics is something called World's Largest Ghost Hunt. So this is a really cool event. It's usually held every September. So this was created by my friends Maria Schmidt and Brian J. Canada. Now, of course, Maria, she is a very nice lady. So they created this idea of bring in para-unity. So World's Largest Ghost Hunt is where we have all these teams from around the world, 200 or 300 teams investigating various haunted locations. So it's a live stream investigation held the 4th Saturday every September, and of course live streamed all over the world. And it's the idea of bringing para-unity, bring all these teams together in one place to investigate haunted locations. So their idea was to bring like all these different techniques, investigation techniques, and broadcast them all over the world. So we actually did World's Largest Ghost Hunt 2021 with Maria, and we did the Sanderson Museum. Of course, we had Rick and Melissa this time with us, and our former team member who's no longer with the team. And the night that we were there, we actually had some really strange things happen to our World's Largest Ghost Hunt 2021. We were upstairs and investigating the violin room again. And what was really weird was Rick and Melissa went to go downstairs, and so all of a sudden, they said, the luggage bags are piled up stacked up on right where the stairs was near the entrance to the museum. And Rick and Melissa were like, did you guys put these bags here? We're like, no, we were up here the whole time. So for that to happen, fortunately, to have a security camera pick up all these bags being stacked up, where all 4 of us were in that one room. So for that to happen, that was pretty strange. And then what was even wilder was when we were doing Phantom Time, we captured this EVP, and we got this response that be afraid. So there was something there that was trying to keep us in that museum. So we definitely felt it was the presence of Christian Sanderson's mother, Helen, who was known to haunt the upstairs and the downstairs. It sounded spot on with her voice, so I'm pretty certain it was her. So that was a pretty wild EVP. So we actually got a lot of evidence from that investigation. So it's really, pretty amazing event. And of course, last year, unfortunately, Maria didn't do. We were trying to do World's Largest Ghost Hunt 2022 at Poplar Hill Mansion, which is this old, this place in Maryland. This doctor named Dr. John Houston had created it. The whole town was built around this home. It dates back to the early 1800s. He founded the first medical schools in Pennsylvania and in Maryland. And of course, the night that we were there, we were just having problems with the live streaming software. They changed it from StreamYard to something new. And unfortunately, we couldn't stream it, but it was just an amazing investigation. So World's Largest Ghost Hunt, you can go to largestghosthunt.com, and that might tell you if they're doing it this year or not. I'm not sure, but it's fantastic. People want to check out that are interested in doing World's Largest Ghost Hunt. If Maria plans on doing it this year, that's where teams can register.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that information.
And one thing I'd like to start talking about also is this paranormal directory. So I'll give you the whole backstory of this, but I think it's a fantastic website that everyone that has a team should know about. So in 2007, there was this guy named William Wilk, or Bill Wilk. If you heard of Bill, everyone's heard of Bill Wilk. He created a website called paranormalsocieties.com. The idea was where people that were clients could go search teams in their area to find a team to do. If their home or business is haunted, they could go and find this whole team directory on this website. Unfortunately, so Bill created this whole team directory. It grew really fast, but up until 2020, he started saying, "Hey, I need help. I'm running. I don't have enough time to do all this." So unfortunately, Bill appeared in June of 2020. So unfortunately, when he had left, so he vanished into thin air. So this is where so the website was left with 4,892 teams, just a hair under 5,000. So he almost had 5,000 teams on this website. Unfortunately, no one knows what happened to him. Did he die? Did he pass? Did he just vanish in the air? No one knows. So the good news is his friend, Josh Bandy Rutter, he runs a team up in Wisconsin called Kakuna paranormal. So the good news is Josh said, well, you know what? Since Bill's not around anymore, I'll create a new website, but I'll build it with more features. So he went ahead and purchased the domain paranormalsocieties.org. So it's the same one, paranormal, instead of the .com, just change it paranormal, all one word, societies.org, and I'll plug that in for you at the end, and I'll link it for you on text.
Okay.
So the neat thing about paranormalsocieties.org, it also builds off of what Bill did, but Josh went ahead and kind of put more features on it. So the really neat thing when Bill had paranormalsocieties.com was there was this case management system. So where teams can actually, people could send, he would post like cases on paranormal lists, like, looking for investigations in Honolulu, Hawaii, looking for investigations in Philadelphia, New Jersey, just all over the country where these teams could do it. But the nice thing, Josh is creating a system where it's a self-managed system. So when you go on when you apply into the directory, it's very important that you set up all your specializations. So you're going to be able to set up your service area, like, for example, what states you do investigations in. You want to be able to set up your specialties, like what do you specialize in? Residual hauntings, mediumship, Bigfoot, UFOs, just all the check mark boxes. So you want to set this up and then set up your service area. And then, fill out information about your team and your website. And the beauty of this is there's a new case management system coming on July 4th. And this case management system that's coming in July, well, actually, it's just like the same thing that Bill had when he sent all these cases out on Twitter. But the nice thing is now you'll get an email notification on your account. And what will happen is all you got to do is to view that case, you have to log into the paranormalsocieties.org account. And then you'll be able to, once you have that account, you'll be able to log in and claim the case. It's, you can work with the client on setting up the investigation. So it's a beautiful system that has a lot of potential. And he also set up because the original website didn't have you can now post paranormal events on the website. And I think so far there's over 200 teams that have signed up for it. So it's only going to get bigger as the website gets more exposure. So I'm glad that's taking on the Paranormal Society's, legacy and building it in a new way. So it's like taking what Bill did and expanding upon it.
Okay. Well, the old group, United Paranormal International, had a similar database like that. And if anybody was contacted in your area, they would refer you, calls to you to be handled. So, but I don't know if they're still active or not, like I was talking to you about before we started the broadcast here. Bill Vail ran that out of Dallas, Texas. And I haven't talked with Bill in a long time. In fact, after this meeting tonight, our little talk, I'm going to email him, see what his status is, what's going on, and check up on the status of United Paranormal International, see what they're doing. I haven't heard from them in years, and I'm real thankful to you for letting me know about this paranormalsocieties.com and .org, because that is very helpful to groups that are active out there and getting referrals and stuff get on this list. So that's nice. And we ought to be working together more like that. So yeah. How about
community? So I would love to talk to you also about Dark Matter News and how Phantom Detectives acquired this amazing news service.
Okay, so, go right ahead. Feel free.
So this was Dark Matter News was a news service. Of course, Leo Ashcraft used to run the Mutual News out of Dallas, Texas. In 2015, he was hand chosen by the late, great Art Bell, who, of course, came back for the final time. He passed 20 in April 13th of 2018. Toxicology reports, of course, report it was a prescription drug overdose, which is pretty much known. But Art also had OCPD and all that. So what he did was he employed a guy, Leo Ashcraft, that had this news service called Dark Matter News. It was a 5-minute paranormal newscast that was in audio format on his show on Art's show Midnight in the Desert. So it was at the bottom of every hour. And what the advantage of it was Art was able to take a quick break and come back. And then, so we went ahead, and Leo didn't want anything to do with the news service. In May of 2021, he said, "Hey, I don't want this anymore. My domain's about to expire. I want to get rid of it." So I said, "Well, you want to buy this?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what I'll do with it, but I guess I'll make an offer." So I went ahead and we worked out a deal for the purchase price. So the advantage of having that included the Dark Matter News logos, the Dark Matter News audio files, the Dark Matter News website, and the Dark Matter News trademark. So everything we got like packaged together. Fortunately, the trademark, we tried to apply for it, but there's something called Dark Matter TV, so we have to have permission from them and a consent form. And unfortunately, they're not willing to work with us on the trademark process, but we still have like Creative Commons licenses we can still use, and first-time license that help protect the brand. Sure. The nice thing we did was we had the whole entire website torn down. So I was thinking, instead of just like letting the whole brand die out, just let it disintegrate, I was thinking, why don't we just bring it back as a tribute to Art Bell's memory? So I just went ahead and had a new website completely. I tore down the original website and had it rebuilt. And it's a beautiful website. You go to darkmatternews.com. If you need, it's all things paranormal news. If you want news on UFOs, we got stuff on there. If you want news on Bigfoot, there's news on there. If you want news on ghosts, that's on there. If you want news about conspiracy theories and forbidden archaeology, it's a great tribute to art, but also in a way, we also bring in a modern format. So the nice thing about having that website redone was we also set up a MailChimp where we can collect emails to people who want to go and read about paranormal news and want me to send us email blasts. We could do that now. So it's a great way to remember his legacy and what he meant, because a lot of people that listen to Coast AM with Art Bell remember. So it's a great way to, this was kind of the news service for his final return. So it's very important to keep it going.
Well, some of those old things, a lot of people are really into the new stuff, and there's a lot to be said about new stuff, but there's a lot to be said about some of the old stuff too, and some of it really needs to be brought back. You're right. And my group is kind of turning toward history too here, and going back in history a little bit. So there's a lot to be said about historical facts.
Absolutely. And this was a lot of fun tonight. I had such a fun time. And now I like to, we'll go into one topic I would love to talk about. It's like what are our short and long-term plans for Phantom Detectives and what we're working at. I would love to tell you some of the new things that we're doing.
Please do.
So what we're doing first is we're going to be investigating the Bucksville house coming up on July 22nd, 2023. And the good news is Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer, will be there, and the Bucks County Courier, one of the top newspapers, will be joining us to do a story on our investigation there. So it's really cool thing about this house is not only was it was also featured on America's Most Haunted Inns in 2005, but also the really neat thing about this old place is that it was also featured on Chip Coffey, of course, the world famous psychic, Chip Coffey.
Sure. Everybody knows Chip. Yeah.
Nice, great guy. And Chip actually did an episode of the Psychic Kids there. So this is going to be a lot of fun doing that. And then, of course, I think in September, we're working on appearing on a local TV show in Delaware called The 302 on ME2 with Jackie Ferris, a really fantastic local show that focuses around the Wilmington, Delaware area. So we're going to be hopefully doing that. And of course, we're going to, we were just on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie on Friday. So that was a lot of fun. There's a lot of excitement coming up, and we love to aspire to help people. And we're hoping that we can help a lot of teens and a lot of people in the area. And of course, your listeners, we would love to help you guys out any way that we can help your team grow and get the word out. We love it.
Two-way street, Joshua, two-way street. Well, it's a little early, Joshua, to wrap up. We got 10 minutes left, but I guess I've talked out, and I think we've covered everything that we were going to talk about, so we'll just end it a little early. I want to thank you for being a guest on our podcast and sharing all the info. Go ahead. You got something?
One last thing, I like to plug in our websites. That's usually I do that at the end.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and plug in the websites. So if you'd like to reach Phantom Detectives, the main team, all one word, PhantomDetectives.org. That's our team website. So you can email us if you have any cases or you want to talk to us live. We have a Discord server, a virtual chat community. So PhantomDetectives.org is our website. To reach Rick, if you have any UFO cases, UFO research, want to know anything about, just read up on UFOs. His website is ERC. So ERC, the number 2, explore.com. So it's ERC2explore.com. So for any UFO things that you need, if you want to reach Melissa, who is our psychic medium and need a reading done or need any kind of information from her, she can be reached at psychic, all one word, psychicmediumautumn.com, psychicmediumautumn.com. That's her website. So you can, see all of her contact information is on psychicmediumautumn.com. To reach Mark Anthony, the psychic lawyer and psychic explorer, he can be reached at afterlifefrequency.com. So that's afterlifefrequency.com. That's all one word, afterlifefrequency.com. And of course, drum roll, Dark Matter News. to reach us on Dark Matter News, which is a division of Phantom Detectives LLC, you can reach us all one word, darkmatternews.com.
Very good. All right. Again, Joshua, thank you very much for coming on board tonight, chatting with us and sharing your information that you have to share. We appreciate you so much. And like I say, it's a two-way street. We're happy to help you in any way we can too. So if you've got any little projects you have come up, you would like some assistance on or something, or you'd like some input, we'd be happy to help you with that too. So anyway.
If you guys need any kind of things posted up on darkmatternews.com for paranormal news, just let us know. If you guys are going to any interesting locations or want us to have put up any kind of promotional stuff, we'll be more than happy to help you. It's always love and respect, and it's all about para-unity in this field. It's all about helping us support each other.
Well, I'm excited that you were on our show, and thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll catch you later, and you'll be hearing from us from time to time. No question about it. Real soon.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Joshua. Good night.